to ASMR Ghost Stories. If you enjoy ghost stories, the hauntings, paranormal, mysterious happenings, things that go bump in the night, welcome. You've come to the right channel. And I tell all my stories either soft spoken or whispered. So before you put on your headphones to enjoy the ASMR experience, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because I do upload twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. So we're gonna go ahead and dive right in to phantoms on roads and highways. Our first story is Resurrection Mary, Archer Avenue, Chicago. Chicago paranormal researcher Richard Crowe has quite a file on Resurrection Mary, a beautiful phantom hitchhiker who haunts Chicago's South Side. She was buried in Resurrection Cemetery on Archer Avenue, which is where she gets her nickname. During the 1930s and 1940s, Mary was often picked up at dances by various people. She would ask for a ride toward Resurrection Cemetery, saying that she lived down that way. As people drove her home, she would yell at them to stop in front of the cemetery gates. She would get out of the car, run across the road, and dematerialize at the gate. Crowe mentioned a report wherein two young men were fascinated by watching this beautiful blonde dance by them. But when she passed near them, they got the strangest sensation. That night, when they got home, they told their father about this woman. They'd never heard of Resurrection Mary, but their father recognized her by the description they provided. I investigated and found out that a week before this sighting, Mary had been dancing around the cemetery's fence, Crowe said. Crowe told me that he had numerous first-person accounts of people who have had Mary open their car doors and jump in. But he had only one first-person account of someone who met her at the dance and followed up by going to the street address she gave them. According to the man's report, Mary had sat in the front between the driver and him. Their friend sat in the back seat. When they approached the front gate at Resurrection Cemetery, she asked them to stop and let her out. It was a few minutes before midnight, and the young men had protested, saying she couldn't possibly live there. According to the narrator of the story, Mary said, "I know, but I have to get out." So being gentlemen and she being so beautiful, we let her out, and she left without saying another word, he told Crowe. She crossed the road, running, and as she approached the gate, she disappeared. The young man continued with his account. She had given me her name and address, so early Monday morning, all three of us guys came to the number and street in the Stockyards area. We climbed the front steps to her home. We rang and knocked on the door. The mother opened the door, and lo and behold, the girl's color picture was on the piano, looking right at us. The mother said that she was dead. We told her our story and left. My friends and I did not pursue the matter anymore, and we haven't seen her again. All three of us went into the service thereafter and lost contact with each other. The haunted highways and roads of Great Britain. People have been traveling about at night in carriages and coaches far longer in Great Britain than in the United States. So there seems little question that their shadowy highways should have an inordinate number of ghosts at the side of the road. The A23. The United Kingdom's most haunted road is said to be the A23 between London and Brighton, where numerous motorists have sighted a small girl with no hands or feet, a spectre in a white trench coat, and a ghost dressed in cricketer's clothing. The A465. On the stretch of 465 near Bromyard in Herefordshire, villagers are concerned that the ghost of an ancient accident from more than 60 years ago could be haunting the country road. A farmer reported as many as 26 drivers crashing into his fence during an 18-month period. Some motorists stated that they mysteriously lost control of their vehicles, that they felt their steering wheels pulled from their hands as they approached the haunted area. The A12. On a dark night in the 1970s, a lorry driver was traveling north of the A12 on a narrow stretch of road outside Blythburgh in Suffolk when he was horrified to see in the road ahead of him a man riding in a small cart pulled by a horse and a woman walking beside the cart. He swerved to attempt to avoid hitting them, but the road runs between high banks at that point. Thus, unable to leave the road, he slammed into the pair and their horse and cart. Shaking with dread and remorse, assuming that he must surely have killed the two, the driver stepped down from his cab and began to walk back along the road, fearing at any moment to come upon the grisly remains. He found nothing. He walked back to his truck, looked underneath and around the vehicle. Nothing. At last he drove on, baffled but relieved that he apparently had not harmed anyone. Later, he learned that the folk of Blythburgh often encountered the cart, the driver, and the woman crossing that piece of road, and the historians among them believe the ghosts date back to the 18th century. Bluebell Hill. Since 1965, dozens of drivers have slammed on their brakes to avoid hitting a pretty young woman in a flowing white dress standing on the road on Bluebell Hill in Maidstone, England. The phantom is said to be that of a woman who was to have been a bridesmaid for her best friend when she died in a car crash the night before the wedding. Her spirit appears still dressed in her flowing bridesmaid's gown, still attempting to get to the wedding on time. Salisbury. In October of 1959, Charles Collins, a salesman for an industrial engineering firm, was returning to London when he decided to spend the night at the Spread Eagle, a small 18th century coaching inn on the western edge of Salisbury. Around midnight, Collins suddenly had the urge to get out of bed and look out the window. As he saw a man in 18th century costume ride through on a horse. He wore a mask and carried a pistol. Collins was captivated by the sight until the man suddenly vanished. In the morning, the landlord unhesitatingly told Collins that he had seen the ghost of a highwayman named Richard Savage, who had been hanged in 1730. Tradition said he had sought refuge at the Spread Eagle, but the landlord turned him away. Ever since, he had returned to the inn to haunt it. Historical records of the Phantom Highwayman go back to 1850, and the ghost has been seen on average about once every 5 years. In 1962, Savage's spirit was seen by 3 American tourists staying at the inn. The Weeping Bride of Stowe, Vermont. Old-timers in the region state that the ghost that haunts the covered bridge on Hollow Road is that of a young bride who was left waiting at the altar by an irresponsible groom. The jilted woman left the church, headed for her elusive lover's home near the bridge on Hollow Road. As she was crossing the bridge, something startled her horse, causing it to bolt and throw her to her death on the rocks below the bridge. Traditionally, in the wee hours of morning, the sorrowing bride returns to search for the lover who betrayed her and humiliated her by jilting her on their wedding day. Motorists traveling the road late at night have reported seeing the image of a young woman dressed in a bridal gown driving her carriage resolutely toward the covered bridge. Some have reported making eye contact with the angry ghost and state that the experience chilled them to the bone. Misty Miss Lotta on Arkansas 64. Drive the lonely stretch of Arkansas Highway 64, especially on a rainy night, and area residents swear that you will be likely to sight the tormented spirit of Laura Starr Lotta, who died a month before her 20th birthday in 1899. Motorists have claimed to have seen Laura's small, frail frame inside a white nightgown standing on the side of the road across from the cemetery where her body lies. Some old stories say that Laura was accosted by a gang and beaten to death on the way to her wedding. Others say that she was killed by a runaway wagon or murdered by a bizarre cult. The inscription on her tombstone reads, "Gentle stranger passing by, as you are now, once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare yourself to follow me." The Spirits of Pocahontas Parkway Toll Plaza. Over the years, I have received numerous reports from truck drivers who make long hauls across the Plains states and who say that they have seen strange things. Most often, in addition to phantom hitchhikers of varying descriptions, they attest to having encountered spirits from the past, ghostly wagon trains, small bands of native tribespeople, stagecoaches, and Pony Express riders. On July 15th, 2002, the driver of a delivery truck reported seeing 3 Native Americans approaching the recently opened Pocahontas Parkway Toll Plaza on State Route 895 in eastern Henrietta Henrico, County, Virginia. In a report filed by the toll taker to whom he related the account, the driver remarked that he had seen 3 breech-clothed warriors carrying torches walking in the middle of the highway. He blasted his horn to warn 2 more torch-wielding men who were clearly illuminated by his headlights. He wondered if some tribespeople were staging some bizarre kind of protest against the parkway. The toll taker took the driver's report and added it to the list of stories from motorists who have had seen strange and unexplainable phenomena. She knew that although she would report the incident to state troopers, who would be right on the case, they would find no Native Americans parading with torches in the area. Troopers who patrol the graveyard shift along the Pocahontas Parkway told Chris Dobie of the Richmond, Virginia Times-Dispatch that they had responded to dozens of calls similar to the one the delivery truck driver made on July the 15th. The first was on July 1st. Then 2 nights later, when the plaza workers reported hearing Indian drums, chants, whoops, and the cries of what seemed to be hundreds of voices. From time to time, there would be seen the vague outlines of people running back and forth through the darkness. Virginia State Police spokeswoman Corinne Geller visited the toll plaza late one night in July and said that the high-pitched howls and screams were real. She told Dobie, August 11th of 2002, that the sounds were not the kind of screams that a person in trouble would make, but whooping. There were at least 12 to 15 voices. I would say every hair on my body was standing up when we heard those noises. An engineer working nights to complete the construction of the bridge in Parkway Plaza said that he and a group of workmen had seen an Indian sitting astride a horse, watching them from below on the interstate. They were about to tell him to move on, that he wasn't allowed to ride a horse on the interstate, when both rider and horse disappeared. Deanna Beecham of the nearby Nansemond tribe confirmed that none of their tribal members were engaged in any kind of protest against the plaza. Although she would not admit to a belief in tribal spirits roaming around near the plaza, she said that there were many rivers, streets, roads, and communities with Native American names in the region. So why shouldn't people see physical manifestations of that impulse? Dennis Blanton, director of the College of William and Mary's Center for Archaeological Research, conducted a dig at the site of the bridge's construction at the plaza. According to his group's findings, there were artifacts scattered all over the site dating back 5,000 to 6,000 years. Edward Hale, an area historian, agreed that the Pocahontas Parkway location had been home to tribespeople for a long time. An area resident who owned a business less than a mile from the toll plaza said that hooting and hollering had been heard near the place for years, and that the local Native Americans had long declared that there were many spirits there. In his opinion, the plaza had been built on an Indian burial ground. The Phantom Warrior Who Raced Trains. A traveling salesman was making the night trip from Minneapolis, Minnesota to Butte, Montana. He had been dozing lightly in a lower berth when he was awakened by what he later described as a damned uneasy feeling. He couldn't put his finger on what was troubling him. He told a reporter for a Chicago newspaper in the summer of 1943. Sorry about the background noise. There were no strange or unusual noises on the train. He could detect nothing that sounded wrong in the steady clicking of the wheels. For some reason, he decided to lift his window shade. That was when he saw the apparition outside of the window, so close that it seemed as if he might be able to touch them if he lowered the glass. Was a brightly painted Indian brave on his spirited mount. The warrior bent low over the flying black mane of his horse and looked neither to the right nor to the left. He seemed to be mouthing words of encouragement to the phantom Mustang as they rapidly gained on the train. I've seen them 5 or 6 times after that in different parts of the Dakotas, the salesman said. They seem to be a solid flesh, but there's a kind of shimmering around them. It's like watching a strip of really old movie film being projected on the prairie. Railroad brakemen, engineers, and construction crews in the Dakotas and Wyoming have often spoken of the Phantom Sioux and his determined race with their swift modern iron horses. They couldn't beat the trains when they were alive, one old-timer who knew the legend behind the spectral races commented, but they seem to have picked up some speed in the afterlife. According to tradition, Frederick Remington, the famous artist of the Old West, sketched the Sioux brave and his Mustang from life as the inexhaustible pair raced the train on which he was riding in about 1888. Remington had heard from several travelers the same tale of a determined warrior astride a big, bony Mustang who tirelessly raced the trains. It was as if the locomotive represented a tangible symbol of the encroaching white man, and the Sioux believed that if he could conquer the iron horses, his people could vanquish the pale-face invaders. With a marrow-chilling war whoop, the warrior would have come astride the train engines as they entered a wide-open stretch of the prairie. The Mustang would pound the plains until sweat formed on its lean, hard body. Only the greater speed of the locomotives would at least enable them to pull away from the chanting Sioux and his indefatigable mount. One can easily sense the great admiration Remington had for the spirit of the Sioux and his animal as he painted their images. Remington named his piece America on the Move. And there you have it. Have you ever encountered any kind of spiritual activity or phantom on a road? Go ahead and comment below. And if you have a story of your own, you can either comment below or email me. My email is in the description box. And thank you again for listening. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. I do upload twice a week on Mondays and Thursdays. Until then, stay just a little scared.